Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Yenle and I'll be your moderator for today. Please let me know if you have any difficulty hearing in the chat function on the sidebar. So this is part 2 of our webinar series. Part 1 was 2 weeks ago about forecast and demand planning, and today's webinar will be about supply planning and inventory management. If you have any questions during the webinar, please share it with us using the chat function, and we will address them at the end of the webinar. So before we begin, I'll introduce our speakers for the day. So we have Nicola Nems, Supply Chain Optimization Manager for Visio Asia. Nicola has nearly 16 years of experience working in cross-functional areas. His areas of expertise include supply chain management in planning and execution, enterprise processes, and information and goods flows, and project management. And then we have Yaing Lan, Supply Chain Consultant, Colibri Expert. She has a solid supply chain experience in planning, execution, and control of operations. And myself, I'm the Marketing Manager at Visio in charge of supply chain marketing activities. With that, I'll pass to Nicola to begin the webinar.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar on Colibri and best practices in forecasts, demand planning, and supply planning processes. Before starting, let's do a quick introduction first about myself, really quickly one. Because Yenle introduced me very well so far. So I just would like to add that as Yenle said, I got background in supply chain, ERP, and IT because I deeply believe that processes without solution or solution without processes cannot be the right solution to improve companies' performance. At the beginning, I was more in ERP. Now I'm more in supply chain. I worked in operation also. Now we have a team here to work on all the supply chain planning aspects. And I really believe that best practices, good processes, good management, and good solution can enable companies' performance and obviously sales. I will also introduce quickly Visio. I think some of you have joined the previous webinar 2 weeks ago on vision, so I'm sorry for them, but you may hear again a bit of Visio. So Visio is a consulting company believing that IT is not only a pain, it's not only a budget, it's a leverage to improve company processes. To be honest, that's also why I'm working for Visio, because we have the same value on that. We have different practices, business and processes with ERP, supply chain, CRM. We have digital with e-commerce, web, mobile app. We have data and business intelligence, and ultimately new technologies. We are now on the 5 continents. We are in total 2,200 people around the world. We are doing 220 million US turnover. If we focus a bit on supply chain, as I mentioned previously as an introduction of myself, but it's also the motto of our supply chain practice, is really to help customers to improve their processes in order to increase their profits by increasing their sales and decreasing their costs, because that's the stake of the supply chain planning from our perspective. Hopefully you agree with that. So when we started the supply chain activities a few years ago, we got few solutions in a pipe because we work historically with SAP, but we decided to select best of breed solution and in order to make sure that the solution we propose are the best match, the best fit for the different industries that we are working with. Nevertheless, we didn't find a solution who could address at that time easily supply chain needs, quick implementation, best practices. So Viseo at that time decided to, although it was more consulting company, to finally invest in developing a solution that could provide all this. That's when Colibri finally started. It was a couple of years ago, and the aim was really to offer our customer a new way of doing forecasting, as you may have seen last week, supply chain planning on the cloud, easily, quickly, with a good return on investments, thanks to nice solution, efficient solution, and by applying best practices. So what we did, we started with the forecast and demand planning, what you have seen last 2 weeks ago, and we completed this offer with flow that you will see later on. Right now, I'm just reminding that as we are a cloud solution, obviously, it makes that we could implement the solution very quickly, and that's why after a few years of work, we already have some customers worldwide. What are the keywords to describe Colibri Suite? When I'm mentioning about Suite, is vision for the forecast last 2 weeks ago, and flow for the replenishment and supply planning. The idea is you may know some solution already on the market, and usually what happens is that they are quite expensive. We are always talking about 50, 100 days of services. We are talking about license, very high license costs. And really the idea of the founders of Colibri was really to make it accessible to all budgets, because what we care is to help people to improve quickly their return on investments. So this is really the first keywords you need to keep in mind. Then the idea is supply chain is a department that's a cross-functional, cross-department functions. Historically, it was only logistics, only production. Still now, we may have difficulties to find really supply chain department in some organization. Why? Because we are a support function. We help different departments, sales, logistics, production, marketing, finance. And one of the key points of that is we need to have a tool where we can easily collaborate between each other. If we still use email, if we still use Excel, or if we don't use a user-friendly solution, then collaboration can be very difficult. So the idea and one of the goals was really to make a solution very easy to access and to be used by different stakeholders along the supply chain. We mentioned about the budget, we mentioned about the collaborative, then obviously people can think that, oh my God, if I involve a lot of departments, if I think about all the supply chain solution, it's days and days of setups and that kind of thing. We keep the goal in mind that we want to be job and start, meaning that we want to be fast to implement, fast to use, a bit plug and play, should I say. At some point, and obviously we will be happy to help you to do that, we could do some what we call proof of concept. And the proof of concept can take only few hours to create with your data. it's how easy it is to start on Colibri Vision and Flow. For those who have seen Colibri Vision last week, you may have seen that the solution is very intuitive, very easy to use. This is also something that we carried on Vision and Flow to make that people focus on the right things at the right moment and not have plenty of screen where they can be lost. So hopefully later you will see that as Vision is, Flow is also intuitive and easy to use. I mentioned quickly about the jump and start thing. Quick to implement, to be accessible to all budgets, to be intuitive and easy to use, to be efficient, because we have a lot of stakeholders to manage with, a lot of items to manage with, to deal with, a lot of constraints and issues in our day-to-day life in supply chain. We don't want people to spend days and days to implement the solution. We usually implement each modules between 10 and 20 days for each of them. So this is a good, really good point, a really strength of Colibri offer. And then one of the most important, I would say, is best practices. If you have a solution that is just doing statistical for forecast, it's not enough. If you just have a replenishment or supply planning tool that is just doing MRP calculation, and then after you struggle for other things, it's not good enough. So that's why, while we are talking about the solution, we also believe and do our best to provide best practices in the solution, but also in the way we help you to implement the solution. So I mentioned about Colibri Vision on the left, Colibri Flow on the right. Demand and supply planning, it's a balance between obviously sales and stock of product at the right time, at the right place for the right customer. So it's a balance, it's a load balancing to make sure that both are communicating to each other. Sometimes processes in the companies are disconnected. Sometimes people, stakeholders don't understand each other. So it's important from our perspective to have one offer that you can have both solutions. Last week we have seen forecast, 2 weeks ago we have seen the forecast, usually with customer and product perspective, because that's where salespeople could give the forecast. Usually planners are more on product, or forecasters are more forecasting at product level. But then when it comes, and we are on a monthly, or why not weekly bucket. When it comes to supply planning, then we talk more about product for sure, but location. We talk about daily, weekly, and also monthly buckets. We need to make sure that supply and inventory match the demand. And that's all where the stakes are. So today, as we've seen the forecast last week, we focus only on the supply planning. Once we get the demands, once we get the sales, once we get the inventory already. Just short introduction, because I know that you are waiting for more specific points. You may have implemented, heard, used S&OP processes, sales and operation planning, which is a monthly process starting by demand as a first step, then supply check with the supply and inventory planning and checks and capacity review, and then both of them help to do a pre-SNOP in order to balance demand and supply to, at the end of the month, having a final SNOP planning with forecast and replenishment for the next 12, 24 rolling month. The aim of this SNOP process is to detect in advance, to anticipate the shortage, the high peak of demand, the stockouts, sorry, I already mentioned, the inventory that are too high. Why not to try to get rid of them? And for some, obviously, would be capacity of inventory, capacity of the warehouses, bottleneck. In order to first make sure that you maximize your customer service, that your customer, when he called you, you got the right product or is on the way to come. When I discuss with some customers, some of them are doing, most of them sometimes are doing make to order, but are thinking also doing make to stock because they want to increase their sales. But for that, you need to have the product. Once you have the product, your customer satisfaction increase, the loyalty increase, and then obviously the profit increase on that one. This works also with reasonable costs. So although everybody thinks that if I want to improve my customer service level, I just need to have a lot of stocks. This is one way, but it costs a lot of money in different areas. If we try to assess the different costs, I will not go really into detail on this, but these are all the stocks that you try to kill on the item carrying, ordering, stock out, and capacity related costs. If you anticipate, if you know the lead time, if you know your demand, if you use the right method, if you manage by exception or by priority, then obviously these costs will decrease. But then at the same time, your profit and sales will increase. And that's all the aim of Colibri, of supply chain activities within Visio. And that's why today we will try to show you through a tool, but also to give you some clue about what are the best practices to apply to manage these both challenges. Before moving forward, I'll give you a few what we should say best practices in supply planning. Obviously, some of you may have used ERP, maybe supply chain planning solutions. Some of you have maybe used MRP within a ERP. You may have found that it's complex, it's not clear, you don't find some easy to make decision. You just run it and then at the end you don't understand why you have overstock stills. In whatever processes, whatever we are doing, it's a continuous improvement. It's monthly process, weekly process, and needs to be reviewed and to be adjusted. But for this, when you have thousands of SKU or a lot of locations, you cannot review all of them. So the tool and the way we need to work is to manage first by exception and to make sure that we work on the thing that increase the sales. Or when we make a mistake in terms of stock, but then the impact in the cost is not that important, I would say. You may have discussed and so seen last 2 weeks ago that we try to work as much as possible with ABC classification to try to focus and to pay attention on the A class and maybe not that much on the B and C, because obviously if you work well on 20% of your items, but then it impacts 80% of your activity, obviously your return on investment will be better. So manage by exception is the key best practice to always think about. Some ERPs that you may have used, they just have the MRP calculation. It's important to have different methods, different way of managing the supply and the setup regarding product, regarding suppliers. You cannot do everything the same way for everybody, for every items. So this is really important for you to be able to have a tool explaining you, giving you different methods to apply. Obviously, when we talk about supply planning, we need to talk about suppliers. When you don't have the right information about why you have this purchase order suggested, it's very difficult to discuss with a supplier. It's very difficult to make a decision. So having the visibility by supplier, being able to share this visibility with the supplier, it's also something important in the best practices. Your supplier is not only a vendor. For the A-class item, he has to be a partner. But for this, you need to make sure that you have reliable data, reliable visibility to share with him. And you need also to be able to prioritize the supply with him regarding a real priority. Not for forecast maybe, not for safety stock replenishment, but you need to know that, for example, this order, you really need to have it for orders that are already confirmed by your customer. And this is more the decision making. You need at some point to get this information to take the right decision at the right moment. You need also, it's a bit linked to manage by exception. When I mention about the right decision and manage by exception, you need to know where are your problems? Is it a stock out? Is it a problem of too much inventory? You need to get this information quickly to react quickly. We are talking about the daily bucket, weekly bucket. Without any alerts daily, without a tool providing you a to-do list daily, you will never be able to do that. So this is all about best practices in supply planning and how Colibri and Visio can help you. I hope that I haven't been too long, but it was really key information I wanted to share here. Now I think that's something that you wait more is to go into detail in these different steps. So I will give the mic to Yain, our Colibri consultant, who will go through different steps and different processes within Colibri and supply planning. Please, Yain.
Thank you, Nicolas. Good morning, everyone. So, what are the things that we need to do in supply and inventory planning process? Just simply ask yourself two questions. First one, when to place an order. Second one, how much to order at one time. So, when to place an order. If an order is placed late, there is the possibility of stockout. If the order is placed early, there would be the extra inventory and cost. Hence, an order review method is needed to tell when to order. Common systems include reorder point system. You order when the inventory is below your reorder point. It is used for independent demand, but is not for high-value Class A items because of the inventory cost. Then, periodic review system, which is also known as fixed interval order system. An order is placed every n times units, for instance, every 2 months. This method is often used when the product is perishable with short shelf life and the ordering cost is low. So, last one, MRP, Materials Requirement Planning System, is more for dependent items, and this is more well known. When the first question is solved, let's figure out how much to order at one time, which is about lot sizing. Decision rules for determining what lot size to order at one time include lot for lot, which it means only required amount is ordered, and order quantity change as requirement change. This is more for expensive items like Class A. Why? Because you order exactly what you need, so there is no additional cost, and it is applied in lean or just-in-time environment. Next one is about fixed order quantity. A specific amount is ordered each time when an order is placed. This method is quick and simple because there is no complex calculation. It is often made on the basis of what seems to be reasonable. But of course, it may lead to inventory build-up since the quantity purchased is beyond short-term requirement. The last one is about order end period of supply. Here, we order a required amount to satisfy demand for a certain number of periods. For example, order 2 months of supply. In this method, if your actual and your planned net requirement are the same, then there is no unused lot size inventory created. This lot sizing method is more for inexpensive items from class C. So how we apply this into supply and inventory planning process? In Colibri, we have a standard process include planning method and lot sizing rules as well as the other best practice. So this is a complete process. Start from import, then your planning group setup and order policy setting, your calculation, then and your actions and export. Of course, there is no need to go through all the steps in your daily or weekly base. For instance, you only import dynamic data like stock level and sales in daily and weekly base. And you may only change your planning group and ordering policy every 1 or 2 months when you are doing a method review. The key process in each day and week is launching the calculation and the actions to your alert. So let me go to the details one by one. First, we start with import. Basically, you import 2 types of data. One is static data, which is the structure of your database, like item, hierarchy, location, SKUs, and the link between your SKU and suppliers. Another one is your dynamic data, which is needed for supply planning calculation, like your stock level, your sales order. As mentioned, you don't have to import the static data every week, but you have to import the dynamic data frequently. Then is a planning group process, which is for user to add, delete, update the SKU group, and assign them to an user. So let me show you directly in Colibri screen. As you can see, I'm in the planning group screen. On the left of my screen, you can see there are some existing groups. Under each group, you can see there are some SKUs. And a group needs to assign to only one user. But one user can have several different groups. On the right, you can see some unsigned SKUs. Then I create a new group called Class A based on my ABC classification. And I assign this to a group. I assign this group to a user. I save it. Then I select some of the unsigned SKU, which I would like to group them under Class A. I select this new group, and I assign these SKUs. Okay, I'm done. As you can see, the SKU include the item, location, and supplier information. Once you finish your planning group update, you can go your next step, which is about setting. The setting is about your planning method, your planning horizon, the lot sizing, and some safety stock, etc. So here I'm in the settings screen. So I choose the planning group 1. I choose MRP as my planning method. I enter lead time manually equals to 5 days for example. And I can also import the lead time. For lot sizing, I choose fixed order quantity equals to 50. Then I define my safety manually as 20. The next one, I go to reorder point. You can choose auto calculation, manual, or import. Let's just put as manual saying equals to 35. You can also have some other details, like if you would like to group your order, or you select your delivery schedule, saying include Saturday or Sunday or not. All the details will impact your next step, which is the calculation. Once the setting is done, you launch the calculation. Let me show you the result. So this is the result. A graph first shows you the behavior of a planned order, purchase order, gross requirement, inventory information. Below, you can see your setting details in previous step. And you have some planned orders suggested by the calculation. You can validate it to become a purchase order. Normally, you launch the calculation every time when you change some parameter in your setting process, or when you import the new sales and stock information. So how you can monitor the process and make manual changes when you need, which is the next step. In this step, you reviewed your alert, placed and planned order manually if you disagree with the calculation, and you analyze the details and reviewed your method based on the output from the calculation. So let me go back to Colibri. So there are different alert messages on the left of my screen. We have 3 stockout issues, 0 delivery delay, 8 SKU below the safety stock, 7 required planning, and 0 advanced receipt, and 0 overstock. Then we look at an example coming from the alert, which is currently below safety stock. So we can analyze the details by checking the transaction report, where you can see all your client order and your planned order. You can modify your order. For example, we change planned order, the quantity which is 720, and then we change to 500. Then we can also create another manual order. For example, I create another order in the coming days, 220. You can see later, this will become a purchase order in your planning table. And I can also validate the previous 500. When all of these are done, you may would like to export your PO if necessary, or create your PO in your ERP system. So finally, we have gone through all the steps. Hope it is clear for you. In the supply and inventory planning model, which is flow, Colibri has included the different best practice with a simple process. Thank you, Yai. Here are some of our references in different industries. And with that, we open the floor to questions. So you can type your questions in the chat function on the sidebar. Okay, we have a first question. How can we select the different planning method or lot sizing method? Thank you, Ian. So let me answer the first questions. Actually, there are many things that you need to look into when you are selecting an order method. In most of the case, we need to check the things like ABC classification, like lead time, like the demand behavior, like the price of your items, the margin, ordering cost, holding cost, and which service level that you would like to achieve. Actually, it's a big question because the method is different from industry to industry and different from item to item. But the criteria that you are looking at basically are these key ones. Yeah, that is my answer. Any other questions? Okay, the next question we have, do you have EOQ in the system? Good question. So EOQ is the order quantity that minimizes the total holding cost.
and ordering cost. And I would say is one of the oldest and classical production schedule models. But actually, when you apply EOQ, it is necessary that the demand need to be remained constant throughout the year. And moreover, there are some huge assumptions like the ordering cost should maintain constant, and the lead time is not fluctuating, and the purchase price is constant for every item, and there is no delay in your replenishment. And we know that the formula doesn't allow to combine several different products in the same order, and which is not the case in most of the industry. So without all these assumptions, the EOQ model cannot work to its optimal potential. So it's good to understand the concept of EOQ, but basically this is not best practice in most of the industry. Yeah, so that is my answer for this question.
Any other questions, ladies, gentlemen? Maybe before, while you are thinking about some question, I just would like to say a bit something, because we are here, in Asia, obviously, we are here in Singapore, where the supply chain challenges are different from Europe, from US, where Europe is a free trade between few countries. US is just different states. Here in Asia, and particularly in Singapore, where Singapore is considered as a hub for the whole region for import goods, supply chain planning, forecasting, supply planning, safety stock, because not a lot of space, is, according to my perspective, very important. Once goods arrive in Singapore, it can take 1 week, 1 day, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to reach the final destination in APAC. It could be somewhere else, by the way, but the thing is, sizing, dimensioning the safety stock properly, not only a fixed safety stocks. Managing by exception, but within different DCs location, maybe around Asia. Aggregating the forecast for the whole region. Trying after to make a safety stock at this level, not at each DC's national warehouse. These are, according to me, the most difficult challenges in Asia Pac. So obviously, depending your activity, if you are mechanical, devices, F&B, pharmaceutical, these change your challenges and how you will decide what order policy you will set up, what safety stock you will set up. The shelf life obviously impacts and is very strategic for different products, which is not for others like mechanical. Trends, high tech, and new technology replacements, all that kind of things needs to be analyzed and then managed wisely. We deeply think that Colibri vision for the forecast and Colibri flow can quickly help you to improve your supply chain planning and your optimization of stock and hence your profit. We hope that the presentation was clear. If there's any other questions, maybe? Okay.
This is the end of our webinar. Thank you for joining us at this webinar. Feel free to drop us an email if you have any further questions. And we will have more webinars in the future, so we hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.